The janitor's number. The gym card reader beeps red. Twice. Diego steps back from the machine at Iron Vault Fitness, protein powder tub still on the counter, and mutters something about a new card being on the way. The girl at the register has heard this sentence enough times to not even look up anymore. Nobody in line says anything. They never do. 60% of the country is one bad week from this exact beep. Not people who never learned to budget. People who learned all the right rules. Maxed the 401k, skipped the latte, buy and hold, and still ended up standing at a register doing math in their head while a stranger waits behind them. Diego isn't broke. He's a PE teacher and assistant baseball coach at an Austin area high school. $41,000 a year. Decent for what it is. He just can't explain where it goes. He pockets his phone, and it buzzes before it's even back in his pocket. A story from Jordan, who teaches down the hall. A brand new Cybertruck, stainless steel catching the parking lot sun. Caption, finally treated myself. Diego knows exactly what Jordan makes because they started the same year. He does the math without meaning to. $60-some thousand on a teacher's salary, financed at whatever rate a 36-month truck loan runs these days. He doesn't say anything at practice that afternoon. He just watches Jordan lean against the driver's door while the JV kids run sprints, phone out, filming the truck for another story. That night, Diego is at a rooftop bar in South Congress with two guys from his coaching staff. The good bourbon crossed off the menu in his head before he even orders, a well drink instead. Below them, downtown Austin does its thing at dusk. The glass towers, the little lit-up crane skyline that never seems to finish building anything. He thinks, randomly, about Mike Tyson. Not the fights, the number. $400 million over a career, and by 2003 he'd filed for bankruptcy. The mansions, the tigers, the entourage that never stopped needing paying. Tyson wasn't poor for a second of it. He was rich the entire time he was going broke. Those aren't the same condition, and nobody tells you that until you've already confused them. Rich is the thing a camera can catch, the truck in the driveway, the watch on the wrist, whatever somebody spent to look like something in a 14-second video. Wealthy has no photo. It's the number nobody screenshots, sitting in an account that isn't trying to prove anything to anybody. Diego orders a second drink he can't really justify and doesn't think about that distinction again for another 6 weeks. That's usually how it goes. The grocery store version of the same feeling. It isn't always a truck-sized decision. Most weeks it's smaller than that, which is exactly why it's easy to miss. Diego used to shop at the H-E-B off Slaughter Lane without thinking twice. Then a colleague mentioned the new place near the lake, the one with the wood countertops and the $17 jar of almond butter, and somehow that became the place he drove to instead, 20 extra minutes each way, because it felt like the kind of grocery store a person who had it together would shop at. Nobody was watching him unload the cart. That was the strange part he'd notice later. The audience for most of these decisions was nobody at all. Just some version of himself he was trying to convince. He'd walk out with $60 of groceries that would have been $38 somewhere else, and feel, briefly, like the gap was the price of being a certain kind of person, rather than just the price of almond butter. He didn't add it up for months. When he finally did, sitting with his bank statement open on a Sunday, the grocery gap alone came out to something like $90 a month, over $1,000 a year, spent on the feeling of a store rather than the food inside it. It wasn't dramatic. It was just quiet, the way most of the leaks are, the number that grows the wrong way. The truck story keeps showing up in his feed, and so does a version of the feeling. Small, dumb, specific. He wants people to stop assuming he's the broke gym teacher. So when the outfitter downtown starts pushing 0% sounds like financing on a full setup, hydration pack, GPS running watch, the whole trail running kit he's been eyeing since spring, he opens a store card on the spot. $840. The register makes a happy sound this time. 6 weeks later, he actually reads the card agreement instead of skimming it. The introductory rate wasn't 0% on everything. It was 0% on nothing. Actually, some promotional line he misreads standing at the counter. And the real APR sitting underneath it is north of 26%. He'd been paying the minimum. The balance had barely moved. He does the math slower this time, the way you do when a number finally has your attention. Debt compounds exactly like an investment does. Same mechanism, opposite direction. Every month he doesn't clear it, The store's bank earns what he thought he was saving by financing it instead of paying cash. He bought trail running gear. He also, without meaning to, signed up to fund somebody else's return. He closes the app, opens his email instead, the way you do when you want a different problem to look at, and there's a calendar reminder from his landlord about a rent increase kicking in next renewal. Not catastrophic, just tighter than it used to be. The phone call with his dad. He calls his dad that weekend, mostly to talk about nothing. A Longhorn score, a broken gutter, and somehow it slides into the truck, the card, the number he still hasn't said out loud to anyone. His dad, who spent 30 years installing HVAC systems and never once made real money by any conventional measure, goes quiet for a second on the other end of the line. "You know, I never made what your uncle made," his dad says eventually. "He had the boat, the lake house. I had the truck I drove to work and the one I drove on weekends, and they were the same truck." He says it without any bitterness in it, more like he's reporting a fact he settled a long time ago. "Your uncle's renting an apartment now. I'm not saying that to be ugly about it. I'm saying I don't know what the boat cost him in the long run, and neither does anybody else, because that's not the kind of thing that shows up in a photo." Diego doesn't say much back. He just sits with it, the way you sit with something a parent says that turns out to matter more a few days later than it did in the moment. A retirement party in the gym storage room. Late October, the district throws a retirement party for Mr. Alvarez, who's run maintenance and grounds at the school for 31 years. It's in the cafeteria, sheet cake, a banner somebody made in the front office, folding chairs arranged in a loose horseshoe around a table of framed photos nobody quite knows what to do with. Diego's only there because Alvarez fixed his classroom AC unit about 9 times without ever once complaining, and because the guy always asked how the JV kids were doing like he actually wanted to know. Somebody's kid. Alvarez's granddaughter, maybe 19, home from college, mentions offhand, while cutting cake, that her grandfather is helping pay her tuition outright. All 4 years. Diego assumes she means loans co-signed, something like that, until the assistant principal, half joking, says something about Alvarez being richer than the superintendent, and nobody laughs it off the way you'd laugh off an exaggeration. A few people just nod, like this is known information Diego somehow missed. Later, in the parking lot, Diego asks his department chair about it, expecting a story about a lottery ticket or an inheritance. It's neither. Alvarez has been putting a fixed slice of every paycheck into an S&P index fund since the mid-1990s. Same amount, same day, decade after decade, through crashes he never touched and rallies he never chased. 31 years of a maintenance worker's salary, mostly untouched, mostly ignored, doing what money does when you stop interrupting it. He drives a 14-year-old F-150 with a dented tailgate he's never bothered to fix, because the truck still starts, and getting it fixed felt like a decision for a problem he didn't actually have. Diego drives home thinking about a name he can't place. Some story he half remembers from a newsletter or a podcast about a secretary somewhere in Illinois who worked the same desk job her whole life, never made more than a modest salary, and put $18 a month into a single healthcare stock back in the 1930s. When she died in 2010, well into her hundreds, she'd quietly left over $7 million to a scholarship fund. Nobody who knew her had any idea. Her furniture, by most accounts, still came from the original owners of her house. He looks it up when he gets home. Grace Groner. It's real. It checks out. He reads the whole thing twice, the second time looking for the part where the story doesn't apply to somebody like him. There isn't one. She didn't inherit anything. She didn't time a single trade in her life. She just kept buying and let 70 years handle the part that actually moves the needle. 72. Divided by whatever you're earning. He opens a notes app and writes down a rule his department chair mentioned in the parking lot. Half as a joke, half as the most useful thing anyone's told him all year. Take 72, divide it by your rate of return, and that's roughly how many years it takes to double. The market's long-run average sits somewhere around 10% a year. 72 over 10 is a little over 7 years. 7 years to double. 7 more after that to double again, except the second doubling is twice the size of the first, because it's doubling a bigger pile than it started with. He's 31. He runs the number on himself without meaning to. If money he puts in this year doubles roughly every 7 years, by the time he's the age Alvarez was when he started, it's doubled somewhere close to 5 times over. He's never once thought about his paycheck as something with its own timeline, ticking whether he's paying attention to it or not. He thinks about the trail gear again, still sitting mostly unused in his closet, still accruing interest against him at 26%, same mechanism as Alvarez's fund, running the wrong way. He does the uncomfortable version of the math, too. What the $840 actually costs him if he only ever pays the minimum. Somewhere north of $2,000 by the time it's gone, for gear that costs less than half that at the register. He stops doing that particular math halfway through. Some numbers you calculate once and then just go fix instead of finishing. Open enrollment and the box he never checks. The district's open enrollment email lands the next week. He's deleted it unread every year since he started teaching. Same subject line, same boredom. This year he opens it. There's a line about the district matching a percentage of whatever he contributes to his 403B, money that's been sitting on the table since his first year, untouched because the form felt like homework with no due date urgent enough to matter. He asks his department chair to walk him through it at lunch. She's not trying to sell him anything. She just pulls hers up, angles the screen so he can see the shape of the account, not the number. She's been contributing enough to get the full match since year one. Nothing dramatic. It's just been sitting there since 2015. You're basically turning down part of your paycheck right now, she tells him, not unkindly. It's already yours. You just have to check a box to go get it. That night, he sets up an automatic contribution. Not a huge one. Enough to get the match, plus a little more, maybe $90 a paycheck once it's all added up. It's an almost insulting amount next to the truck, next to the trail gear, next to whatever Jordan's next story is going to feature. It's not going to buy him anything anyone will comment on. That, it turns out, is close to the entire point. Nobody's going to zoom in on $90. Nobody's going to ask where he got it. It just sits there, doing the one thing money does that spending never lets it do, which is grow while he's doing something else entirely. He also does something smaller that week, almost as an afterthought. He cancels the extra 20 minutes to the lake grocery store and goes back to the H-E-B down the street. Nobody notices. That's the whole point of this one, too. The margin call 2 cubicles over. Not everyone learns this at the same speed. Marcus, who coaches JV wrestling and moonlights doing scoreboard tech for away games, corners Diego by the vending machines in December with his phone already out. A chart, green, climbing fast. He'd put $2,200 into a leveraged bet on a small cap biotech stock 2 months back, borrowed against his brokerage account to size it up, and it's up huge. He's already picked out the watch he's buying with the winnings, some chronograph he's had bookmarked for a year. 3 weeks later, Diego hears about it before he sees it. A tense phone call through a thin office wall, the words margin call used in a sentence for the first time in Diego's presence. The stock dropped hard over 2 trading days, some failed trial data nobody saw coming. Because Marcus had borrowed to buy in, the drop didn't just cost him a fifth of his money. It cost him almost half, and the broker closed the position automatically before Marcus had any say in it. Diego does the math that night out of habit now. Lose half of what you have, and you don't need 50% back to get even. You need 100. Lose 80%, and you need 400 just to get back to zero. The hole doesn't grow in a straight line. It curves against you, steeper the deeper you go, and leverage is just a way of making that curve arrive faster. Marcus doesn't bring up the chart again. Diego doesn't ask. It isn't cold between them, just quiet, the way most things go quiet once the performance stops paying off. Diego thinks, walking back to his classroom, that the actual difference between him and Marcus was never intelligence or income. It was speed. Marcus wanted the number to move in weeks. Diego, without really deciding to, had started letting his move in decades. What's left when nobody's watching? Diego checks his account before school one morning in the spring, not out of dread, just habit now. The number is smaller than the Cybertruck, smaller than whatever Marcus almost had for 3 weeks, smaller than almost anything he used to measure himself against on a feed. It's also, unglamorously, entirely his, and it's the first number in years that's been moving in his direction instead of against it. He didn't become a different person. He just stopped needing the register to agree with him. The store card is still open, still has a balance, just a smaller one now, and one that's finally shrinking instead of quietly growing. $90 a paycheck still lands with no fanfare, no caption, no one leaning over to ask about it. That's what it actually looks like, most of the time. Unremarkable on purpose, happening in a tab almost nobody opens. He still sees Jordan's stories. Still feels the old drop in his stomach for half a second when a new one loads. A boat this time, somebody's bachelor trip, a kitchen renovation with a caption about finally? He doesn't unfollow anybody. He just notices the feeling arrive, notices it's smaller than it used to be, and lets it pass through instead of acting on it. At graduation that June, Alvarez comes back to watch his granddaughter walk, sitting a few rows behind Diego in a folding chair that probably came from the same closet Diego used to fix the AC out of. Nobody in that gym knows what Alvarez is worth. Nobody ever will, unless somebody cuts a retirement cake and a granddaughter mentions tuition in passing. That's not an accident. That's the whole design of the thing. Somebody, somewhere, will post another truck this week. Another boat, another ring, another kitchen with a caption about finally getting there. The feeling might still show up for a second before Diego catches it. It probably always will. A little. The debt from the trail gear won't be gone yet either. Not for a while. It'll just keep getting smaller instead of bigger, quietly, the way most things worth having actually happen. Somewhere out there is a number that's only ever going to belong to him. The only real question left is what he's willing to let it become, and how long he's willing to leave it alone to become it.